Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, people of all ages, welcome back to the Sticky Floors podcast. I am one of your hosts, CJ. I am joined by Mr. Will. Tonight, we are talking about A Bronx Tale. For those of you who may not have listened to our other shows, this is in the month of June. All of our shows have a father's focus, talking about what happens when a father is in the picture, happening what happens when a father is not in the picture. The first two movies we covered this month, 99 Homes and He Got Game, dealt with some absentee fatherism at different points. The next two that we're going to cover are Bronx Tale tonight, and then Boys in the Hood is when the father is actually there all the time, and you see that juxtaposition. So this will be a good and interesting conversation. Mr. Will, how you doing this evening,
Man,
man?
I'm chilling, man. What's going on with you, yo?
Man, I'm just chilling, man. I'm just surviving the game. The game is surviving me. We're surviving together. that's what it's like. That's what it's
I
like.
got you.
That's what it's like, man. So yeah, like just jump into the synopsis and get into it because we got a lot to cover
Yeah,
in the
definitely,
Bronx
definitely,
Tale, man.
definitely a lot to cover. But to add on to what CJ had briefly mentioned, I think the dope thing that as a collective we decided to do was not just fathers and dads, because there is a differential between the two. Excuse me, a difference between the two. But the fact that they're fathers and dads at different points in all of the stories. So hopefully,
Mhm.
the audience, will be able to witness and comprehend exactly what I'm referring to. Um, but with respect to A Bronx Tale, here you have a father who is married. They have one child and they live in an urban setting. So I hope the audience keeps that in mind too, because it's a helpful piece in describing the relationship between the father and the son, or the father and the child for that matter, whether it be a daughter or whatever have you. Um, with respect to that, now we're going to go right into the movie. The backdrop of A Bronx Tale is the 1960s and the Bronx itself. However, that's merely the tip of the iceberg. This narrative is a profound exploration of identity, loyalty, community, culture, ethnicity, and assimilation. Colegaro, and I'm probably butchering his name, Colegaro Anello is faced with an ethical dilemma. There are two influential yet opposing male role models that he has elected to pattern himself after. His biological father, Lorenzo, a hardworking and law abiding citizen who is also of Italian descent, and he works as a bus driver. And then you have the charismatic local mafia boss, Sonny.
Yep. And the Bronx Tale is about the struggle between those two, man. And you mentioned Lorenzo's character, and so we gotta just take a minute to just talk about this being our first movie with Robert De Niro in it.
Yeah.
So it took us like 40 episodes for us to get to somebody who I would put on like my Mount Rushmore
Yeah.
of actors. You know, like I remember what show we talked about it, but I think Robert De Niro is definitely up there with Al Pacino, Denzel Washington. The fourth person, it's still kind of like I'm got different people on it. Sometimes it's Daniel Day Lewis, sometimes it's Leonardo DiCaprio, but I know that Robert De Niro is definitely on it, man. And it's interesting, man. This is a dude who's made movies. He has made some of my most favorite movies to watch. Like, we've talked about it before, but it's like if I think of Godfather Part Two, if I think of Heat, if I think of Casino, like these are like even the Bronx Tale. These are like, and he's not even the main focus of this one, but it's like to me, he just cooks when he's on the screen.
Mhm. See,
You know,
I have reservations only because I haven't seen a lot of his older stuff. So like Deer
Taxi
Hunter, yeah,
Driver.
all that stuff like that predates me. And I don't even have the desire to even want to see those things. You know what I mean? Like I just keep it 100. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of movies that are old and they must see Citizen Kane. Like I still can't get
hmm
through it. Um,
hmm
I have seen all of the Wizard of Oz, but it's a kid joint. You know what I'm saying? And it
hmm
comes on during most times. It's like at least for us, it was during the holidays. So
Yeah.
you had no choice. But something like Gone with the Wind, I'm not trying to watch that, man. I could care less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think I've actually seen Gone with the Wind though.
No.
I actually think I have seen that.
Scarlett,
I
I
have.
don't give a damn. I
Yeah. Yeah.
care less.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, those are the, but like I think when you're thinking about, and I think like somebody like De Niro, his career has been so long
Yeah.
that you can go back to, like you said, Taxi Driver or The King of Comedy, or these movies that are so far back
Yeah.
that, like you said, they predate like your frame of this is something that I would want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also like this period of time where when you look at like the Meet the Fockers
Yeah.
movies, like those kind of joints, like Analyze This, Analyze That, where he was like almost more in like a funny part.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, we talked about a little in the pre-production, man. Then you see like something like Killers of the Flower Moon, and this dude is cooking in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Like I had to go back and see like, well, dang, he didn't win Best Supporting Actor. Who did? It was Robert Downey Jr., which we understand because like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about Oppenheimer, I think in episode 5.
Yeah.
So much deserved. But he's like, I think like he's just in that zone where he's shown tremendous versatility in his roles, and you don't have to watch like 15 Robert De Niro movies
Yeah.
to know that Robert De Niro is a good actor. I guess that's the point. Like the body of work is there, but it's almost like the YouTube joints where they're like, we're gonna show you clips of Michael Jordan's best 5 games. Michael Jordan's got more than 5 good games, but you can get all you need from watching these
Yeah.
clips.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that too is his career started in 68. If I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it, like 68,
yeah,
69. So, you know what
yeah.
I
He's
mean?
been
Like,
around.
that's a long time to be in the game, man. I mean,
Yeah,
like, that's not chump change. What is that, a
yeah,
50-year career? Like,
yeah,
if you start really breaking it down, 50 plus
yeah,
years. So it's like,
yeah.
yo, what you're going to miss out on a movie. And you got to remember, and this is I don't mean any disrespect in this whatsoever, but like he's got some duds in there because he just was after a paycheck because he got divorced and his wife is a money grubbing, you know what I mean?
he
Succubus.
said he
Like,
said he got the adjustable rate mortgage.
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So it's like,
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
yeah. I mean, he's had some different. I think that we talked about. I remember we were talking about Denzel
Mm-hmm.
Washington. And it was around the Equalizer. I remember we said certain actors just bring a certain thing to a role.
Mm-hmm.
Denzel Washington always brings a sense of like
Yeah.
class to every role that he's in. I think De Niro has this thing where he always brings a depth to the character and role. So it's like, even no matter what character he's playing, you always know there's something else going on with that character. It's like there's always like a depth, like something that the character is kind of wrestling with that he just kind of conveys in like the demeanor of the character.
Yeah, I would agree, especially like we did New Year's Eve, and even though this wasn't a major focus on his character, you still could see that this was a man who was coming to
Absolutely.
grips with some regrets he may have had in how he reared his daughter and things that he probably would have done differently if he had more time with her. He didn't
Absolutely.
even expect her to show up. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that goes to tell you that there was some possible estrangement there, and that reconciliation brought him much joy as he was transcending. And I mean, like, just even staying in that same vein as far as the gravitas that he brings to his characters.
Hmm.
Like, there's
Yeah.
movies that probably are 3.5, like Ronin or Killer Elite or Limitless or
I like
I
Limitless,
like
man.
Limitless too, but
I like that. I
it's
like
not
that.
five
Yeah.
boxes. Um,
No, no, no. It's not. No,
so
it's not.
like
It's
so
definitely
those
not.
movies, like I still like him in those movies. Like those are dope
Yeah.
movies for me. They don't
Yeah.
have to be on par with say like a Godfather or a Casino or something like that.
Of
Like, you
course
know what I
not.
mean? Like
Yeah.
he still cooks in those joints though. He still has those moments where you're like, yeah, I got that feeling back. Like that's
Yeah.
that's the Bobby that I know. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah. And you believe him as the bad
oh,
guy.
of course.
Like you believe him
Like he could take it there.
doing
Yeah.
doing the crooked stuff that he's doing. Like
Yeah.
I always think about like, yo, Cape Fear. Like
Oh.
when you watch Cape Fear,
Oh yeah.
was he Max Cady and that he is a lunatic,
Yeah.
and
No.
then like the way that he changes his southern draw, and
Mm-hmm.
he's always saying counselor and that joint, it's completely different, right? But it's like so different from these other roles.
Yeah.
But it's like you get it, like, and you believe, like, yeah, this dude is nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah, you better watch out for him.
But that's to his credit though. You know what I mean? I think he's picked up a lot of tools that he's put in his toolbox that he's able to draw upon, whether it be real life experiences. Like when I think of movies, I think of Robert De Niro as like one of those things: popcorn, seats, screens. Robert De
Hmm.
Niro, Al Pacino, Denzel. Like these are things that I just think are commonplace. And I also think of Tribeca, which is him. You know what I mean? So like,
Hmm.
it's
Yep.
not it's not unfathomable for me to be like, yeah, if Robert De Niro's in a movie, that's a good movie. You know, and
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know it's gonna be. It's got a shot to be good,
mhm.
and you know it's gonna be long.
Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know you can be sitting, and you know you're gonna be sitting there for a while, man.
Yeah,
Which
easily.
is kind of like, how a Bronx Tale is too, man. So yo, let's jump into it. I know you got a couple of we got a couple of culture items, and I think the first one was self determination, man. So
Yeah.
give it to you to kick it off.
I think that's a very good segue with respect to the importance of the type of actor. Well, in this case, the type of son that Calegro is basically for his own intensive purposes for himself that he wants to
Mhm.
be, that he comes to the realization that like, hey, this is the man that I'm becoming. And it's only because of the two strong influences that have sometimes, and it's really weird, like sometimes they are so much in sync that they don't even know it. Like some of the
Yeah.
things that they talk about, that they discuss, and even when they differ, you could still see like, oh, okay, I understand why he came to that decision. I understand his perspective, his take, and I can respect that. I may not like it, but I respect it where he's coming from. So, for example, Lorenzo, he tells his son in this one particular scene while he's shaving, and that's so much like a father and son type of deal, like almost synonymous with
Mhm.
haircuts. And he says to him, "Hey, Dad, I got this friend, and he wants to date a black girl, and
Mhm.
he's telling me, this, that, and the third. What do I think he should do?" Now, I did not expect this from Robert De Niro, especially since he's been married to a black woman. But it was just like he
Mhm.
was like, "No, I don't believe that we should marry. We can be cool,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think we should
Yeah.
be married." And that kind of like threw me off. Like, wait, what? I would expect that from Sonny. You know what I mean? Like the whole
Mhm.
mafia boss. Because Chaz kills in that role. But again,
He
it is
does.
his play. But and it's autobiographical. But I was just thinking, like, man, I'd expect that from him. But he's the one who's more tender, more loving, more considerate, more like, hey, I'm a romantic. Only thing that matters is when you guys are in the bed together and you're under the sheets.
Yeah.
Who cares
When
what
it's just
anybody?
y'all.
Yeah, who cares what anybody else says? Whereas Robert De Niro is more like, nah, we are traditional Italians from Sicily. This is how we roll. This is what we're about. We ain't about that life over there.
Yeah, and I think like the one of the brilliant things about this is that really Sonny and Lorenzo are really flip sides of the same coin.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you almost like in a different life, maybe Lorenzo could have been Sonny. In a different life, maybe Sonny could have been Lorenzo, right?
Hmm.
So I think like it makes sense that Cologino sees something about the both of them that's like valuable,
Yeah.
and like they both have something to offer him. And although he never says it like I'm trying to get this from him and this from the other, it's very
Oh
obvious that
yeah.
they both have something valuable to give him.
Yeah, definitely it's apparent. And it's not so much for me that they are the flip side of the same coin, but it's more like they complement each other. So for example, you got that bar scene where, Lorenzo does not hesitate to be like, no, that's my son, that's my family. You
Hmm.
don't talk to my son. I'll tell my son, go
Yep.
outside and wait for me. And Sonny to his defense says, don't you see how I treat your son? Like, I love that boy. I wouldn't do anything to hurt him or whatever. And Lorenzo's like, I don't essentially he's like, I don't care if you love him or
Yeah.
not, this, that, and the third. He is my responsibility. He's my only son. And he's not afraid or ashamed to declare that to the world, even when he takes a couple of like lumps from these guys. Um,
Yeah, he
like
does.
he won't back down. I can appreciate that
Hmm.
as a father, as a man, as a brother, as multiple titles, Jacks. I mean, multiple hats that I wear. I appreciate that for the fact that it is your responsibility to be there, to try and take or shield your kids from that burden, whatever it may be. Um, you may not be successful, for lack of a better term. You may not win them all, as they say, because like he tells them, hey, I know who you are. I know what you can do. I've never come at you. I've never disrespected you, whatever have you. But yo, push comes to shove, you can get these hands, man. Like, I'll give you that
Yeah.
work. I'm about that. especially if it's about my family. You know,
Yeah.
so I could appreciate that.
Yeah, Lorenzo, I mean, I think like in this movie, the character Lorenzo is playing just operates to me with like high integrity
Yeah.
that comes up in those moments,
Hmm.
because he's really the only character that you see contest Sonny in any way.
Yeah.
In every other space, whether it's gambling in the bottom of the bar,
Hmm.
Sonny is like clearly in charge of every situation. But Lorenzo pushes him because Lorenzo has obviously this love for his son. And there's also this part of Lorenzo that I think sees Sonny as um, not being as powerful as he looks like as everyone thinks he is, right?
Yeah.
And he always reiterates that point to Cologino, like, you know, the toughest person isn't what he's doing.
Yes.
It's
The
like
guy in
the person that
95.
goes to work every day, the guy that comes home every night,
Mm-hmm.
the guy that takes care of his family. Like that's the strong person. So it's like he also has like this thing where he looks at Sonny, not he doesn't put Sonny on the pedestal
Yeah.
that everybody else does.
Well, I think that's the thing too, because Sonny essentially drops jewels to that topic that you're discussing, which is, nobody cares. He says this all the time. Nobody cares. And he doesn't mean, and I think that's the brilliant part about it. Like the ability to break down a complex issue into simplicity.
Hmm.
Very just matter of fact. And he says, like, nobody cares in a way in which you get that there's a deeper meaning to it. With the Mickey Mantle thing and the kid trying to sell his
Yeah.
baseball cards, or
Yeah.
say like the working man's a sucker. Like some of these
Oh,
things,
that's painful.
who you telling? But at the same token, I get it's crude, but I get the gist of what the message is, which is you're not going to get rich working a 9 to 5. You're never
Hmm.
going to be compensated fully for your time at whatever job or whatever occupation you occupy at that particular moment. So these things I get, but that is part of the social contract you sign when you say, "Hey, I'm going to live in the Bronx, New York during
Yeah.
1962, and et cetera, et cetera." Like you make the willing sacrifice. He lives in a traditional home, Calegaro and Lorenzo, where it is the three of them, the wife, the husband, and the son. And they are doing
Hmm.
their best in order to see that their child has a positive upbringing, and they're trying to balance the external forces such as the environment in which they live in, the influences of the gangsters, the ever-changing times that are embodied in the music. I mean, Lorenzo listens to jazz, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
you hear the narration about the Beatle invasion. So these
Hmm.
things, he not only is Calegaro acknowledging them, that they're an influence, that the times are changing, but also Lorenzo and Sonny, and you see how the bikers come in, you see how the influx of
Hmm.
black people moving into the adjacent towns and such.
Yeah.
So these things, I definitely can appreciate these two gentlemen saying like, "Hey, you're going to develop into a man, but it's what type of man are you going to be?"
Yeah, and they're both trying to prepare Cologino or C
Yeah.
for the world that's coming,
Hmm.
right? Not for the world that exists at that time. Because, like you said, the other part of the Bronx Tale is this story about the Bronx also changing
Hmm.
demographically as well, right? From going it from being at least this particular neighborhood being a kind of very insulated, clearly Italian neighborhood to then having like bikers come in or having like black people drive
Hmm.
through, like what does that mean? How do people adjust to that? Even and what does that mean for people adjusting to that from a racial or cultural standpoint? Because like you're saying, Lorenzo's character likes jazz music, but it's also he'll let the jazz music in, but he doesn't want Cologino to be with a black girl, right? So he's also navigating what does it mean to operate in this more racially diverse environment and trying to prepare C for that as well. Where and C in some ways is like, or Cologino in some ways is like even ahead of where Lorenzo is in terms of what that means and what that means like in a real everyday basis. And I think both characters, both Sonny and Lorenzo, kind of know that C is the future.
And not just that he's the future, but um, the future itself is what we make it. So even right now, 2 minutes from now, that's the future. And I think they recognize that when they see him on the stoop, and and this is the symbolism of it. He's on the stoop as a 7, 9 year old, but eventually he
Hmm.
leaves that stoop to have his own club with his friends.
Yeah,
And they're
the
telling him
social
all the
club. Yep.
time, hey, those guys, and they both say those guys aren't necessarily your friends. Now,
Hmm.
Sonny's a little bit more illicit and explicit with what he says, but it's a different story. And I think the fact that, this isn't the typical mob story. This isn't the shoot 'em up, bang, bang, leaving a
That's
horse
not.
head in the bed, whatever have you. This is more of like the everyday grind, because I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
those dudes weren't out on the prowl licking shots and sticking up people, et cetera, et cetera. They were in the social clubs, et cetera, et cetera. And that tug of war for this naive little boy's soul is really at the heart or the cusp of the issue, which also leads into my next point about this clash of the generations. Like you have them coming here, the grandparents coming here, establishing a life. And most of the time, most of these individuals, they migrated to the major cities, either on the East or West Coast, because there was already family members already there who have established maybe a little business
Hmm.
or whatever have you, or just the communal ties. They may have knew of someone from a similar city back in what they call the old country, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and then you have Robert De Niro's character, who is like the first generation born in the States. He's a natural citizen because he was born here. He doesn't have to go through the green card process or whatever have you, crossing through Ellis Island, yada, yada, yada. And then you have Caligaro, who he tells him, like, hey, Dad, why don't you call me C? Now, imagine
Yeah.
they would never be like, yeah, shorten it to something like C.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Lorenzo tells him, like, yo, I named you after your grandfather. It's a respectable name. We're honoring
Hmm.
tradition, family values, these things we hold near and dear. So I'm not going to call you that.
Hmm. Yeah, and Cologino gets along with that,
Yeah.
right? Like he gets with that because he also wants to evolve. Like one of the things that I think this movie kind of hits on is this idea of I think when you're with your father, you go through this point where your father is like God to you, right?
Hmm.
And that's even the title of a book. Your father. I thought my father was God. And then you get to this point in your life where you think that your father doesn't really understand
Hmm.
or he doesn't really know,
Hmm.
right? And then you start trying to brand yourself in a completely different way,
Yeah.
right? And in that process, you I think just young people do this in general, but in this movie I think you see it with the father and son. Like young people want to separate themselves from the
Oh,
past.
yeah.
We want to separate ourselves from the traditions. We want to build the new traditions. We think those things are antiquated, and so that tug of war is always there. And it's interesting because like it kind of comes full circle when he gets older,
Hmm.
and it's like he meets Jane, and Jane tells him like, what's your name? When he says what his name is, it's important for her to call
Yeah.
him by his full name of Cologino,
Yeah.
right? So now all of a sudden, all those traditions and everything that he thought weren't important, even down to his name, become more valuable as he gets older. And I think we learn that too as we're getting older. Like, you see it all the time. There's things that my father told me when I was in my teens that I thought was silly then that make perfect sense to me now as a man in my 40s,
Yeah.
right? And it's like now I'm thinking like, damn, there's stuff he told me when in my 30s I thought was crazy. I guess in my 60s that'll make sense too.
I agree with that dead on, and I can relate to C Caligaro on so many levels just with his name. Like I'm named after my grandfather and my godfather, so I
Hmm.
can understand and appreciate the fact that, like, hey, these people, they were of value, they were good men, and to honor them, I'm gonna name my firstborn after them, and that's the
Yeah, of
we
course.
have. And I think the dope thing about this is not only does Terrell Hicks's character Jane, um, she's admirable in this in so many levels. Not only does she say like, "Hey, no, I like Italian people," meaning like I appreciate other ethnicities for what they bring, but I don't lose sight
Hmm.
of the fact that I'm a black woman in the
Right,
60s and I love my people too, but I can
right.
appreciate the value in others. I think the other thing that's dope about her is that she teaches him. It's not so much a one-way street. Like
Yes.
she is able to willingly accept what he has to say, but at the same token, she says, "Hey, this is what I bring to the table as well." And the
Yeah.
third key piece that I just definitely want to touch upon is actually going back to what we were saying as far as the initial point of the cultural aspect of who's more tolerant or accepting or more willing to be around people of different ethnicities and genders and such. And it's the fact that both Lorenzo and um, Sonny say to him, "Hey, they're not bothering you. These people that are coming in, the black people, whatever
Yeah.
have you, they're just going to school." And out
Yeah.
of all the voices amongst his friends, he's the voice of reason who says, like, "Yo, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like they were ice grilling you. They didn't throw anything at you. They
Yeah.
didn't do nothing to you. They just passing through. Why are you tripping?" And
Yeah.
he cites those two men as the reasons why he gets down like that.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, man, is that, you know, I remember what it was like to have my father tell me that he didn't necessarily like certain friends I had, or like he didn't think that they were really going anywhere, and me not really understanding that or knowing that, right? I think like the other part about this movie, and you see it in like how Sonny kind of sees the kid, Cologeno's friends, and how Lorenzo sees Sonny, is that like men know each other.
Mhm.
Like like there's like this line in Wall Street, the second Wall Street movie. What is it? Wall Street Money Never
Mhm.
Sleeps, right? And Michael Douglas is talking to Shia LaBeouf, and he tells him they're talking about like investing, and he says something like, a fisherman can always spot another fisherman from afar,
Mhm.
right? And what it basically is like, yo, men know men. Like we know when somebody is not on the level, and we know when somebody's on like on nonsense, right? And Sonny knows that Cologeno's friends are on nonsense.
Mhm.
And that's before they were revealed to be like racial terrorists.
Mhm.
Like he knows that they were jerks back in the day when they were kids, when they were
Mhm.
little kids, right? Before they would start trying to get guns and cause mayhem. And in that same way, like Lorenzo kind of knows where Sonny is too. But both of them also know that they can't give C that wisdom. They can only try to get, they can, that's why I tell them all the time, like, you'll understand when you get older. Because you can't, no matter how smart you are, you can't become wise without time.
Right. And I think that's key that you put that too, because there's key scenes in the movie, whether it be when Sonny is in the hallway down the steps with Caligaro and he's telling them, like, yo, no, they're not your friends. Matter of fact, like, that's one of
Yeah.
the quotes I have too that really appeals to me because he says to him, like, look, no, he calls them anything but friends, associates, people you know of, et cetera, et cetera. And then he says, no,
Hmm.
but they're my friends. He's like, no, they're that's who they are.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
very adamant to point out, like, nah, that's not the description of those dudes. Those dudes are this. Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then what about the loyalty and respect, or fear and love part? What about that?
Yeah. Last but not least, I think that the dichotomy between loyalty versus respect is analyzed in Calegaro's journey. Um, he's somebody who's basically on display, like the microcosm of his mutual this tug of war that he's undergoing. He pretty much matures in front of you throughout the course of the movie. Now, obviously, it's what about an hour and 50 minutes, whatever have you, maybe a little bit shorter, but the point is that this is through the years. We're
Hmm.
getting a
Yeah.
brief synopsis, but throughout the years, you see this little boy who is fresh at one moment when they're at the table, and he's like, "Hey, I got to try, right? I got to shoot my shot,"
Mm.
and
Yeah.
everybody knows he's
About the lie.
lying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that scene.
But the fact is like it's in a quote unquote cute way. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Hmm.
blatantly disrespectful. Like, yo, I run the show right here, and there's nothing that you can tell me. And at the same token, like the father understands the temptation, the appeal, the allure that comes with it. Like he was enticed, and the wife was enticed. Like she literally said,
Yeah.
hold on, this $600, we could use this money, or like
Yeah.
150 a week.
Yeah. She does.
That's not bad. You know what I mean? But he's the voice of reason, and rightfully so, saying like, hey, once you're in with these guys, you're in with these
Yeah.
guys. Like there's no getting out. It may seem all good and everything in the beginning, but what happens when the drop is missing or it's short or somebody's ratting? I'm the low man on
Yeah.
the totem pole. They're going to think it's me. And it's a
Yeah.
wrap.
Yeah, well, also Lorenzo, once again, Lorenzo knows what type of men
Mm,
Sonny and his crew are.
yeah.
So he knows that even if they pretend that they're operating above board, or they're operating on a level or under certain conditions and ethics, they're really not going to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, is it worth, it's not worth the money,
No.
and I like how the mom is kind of like trying to like, maybe we should take the money,
Mhm.
like she's like that. And he's very clearly like, nah, we're not gonna do that, because not from some like holier than thou, not from a like, I'm too good to do
Oh, no,
this,
no, no, no.
but from a like real clear
Practical standpoint.
understanding
Yeah.
of what the situation is going to look like. And that's like, that's I mean, he's doing his job as a father and as a husband. He's leading his family, he's taking care of them, he's keeping them away from the other predators in the
Mm.
neighborhood that would be a danger to them, and in ways that maybe they don't even see coming yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, where that enticing, here's the money, you could take it. It reminds me of that Geico scene where the commercial rather, where there's an old dude and he's fishing, he's got the dollar
Oh, you
bill,
just
and he's
got
like, almost got it.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's the thing, like it's within their
yeah,
grasp,
yeah,
yet it's so far away. I mean, like literally, Sonny tells Caligro, like, yo, these dudes, I know I'm funny, but I'm not that funny. These dudes love me, but because they fear me. It's not
yeah,
genuine love. It's a relationship of convenience. Like these dudes
yeah,
only get down with me because I give them enough
yeah,
where they don't feel utterly disrespected. And those scenes are capsulated when they're downstairs shooting craps. Why would you have a little boy shooting craps for you, putting all this
yeah,
money on
yeah,
him? That's utterly preposterous.
yeah.
Then you're putting grown men on timeout in a bathroom.
In a
Like you're
bad,
like,
that's
what?
funny. Yeah, it's
Like
funny.
just because
Yeah,
one, you don't like the way one guy looks, or the other guy is quote unquote bad luck, or the other guy is just obese. Like, what are you telling me? You tell him like, don't breathe on me. Now you got to go on timeout. Like what? And I think the thing too is like that tension is always in the air. It's so palpable that you could cut it with a knife. Like these guys are trying to balance commitment and faith, and even Sonny has a code of ethics, but it's so skewed and contradictory and hypocritical that you look at him like, there's no honor amongst thieves. All rules
yeah,
are off the, like all these rules that you have, like that's ridiculous, man. Anything goes when you're in this type of
yeah,
environment.
yeah. And C has to learn that the hard way. He
Oh,
doesn't learn that until the firebomb with the
yeah.
car incident. Then he really sees that
There's no holds
there's a
barred.
difference between Sonny, what Sonny is saying.
Hmm.
Well, actually, Sonny is true to his philosophy. It's just that what Cologino realizes is, I don't want to live like
No.
that. Like I don't,
Well, he.
I'm not. That's not the life. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be where I can't trust anybody, and
Hmm.
where at a moment's notice I got to be prepared to possibly seriously harm or kill somebody who was close to me 10 minutes later,
Or
ten
driving
minutes ago.
down the street backwards, and all of a sudden you loan your car out, and there's a bomb in there, and you forget that the two people who were in the car, they could have blown up before the bomb
And
even
that was a
got to
great,
you. Uh, and
and that was a great
and
point.
the fact that this boy loves you. He
Yeah,
genuinely loves you, idolizes you, worships you, has been trying to mimic you since he was 7 years old. For a decade,
yeah,
this boy has tried to be you. And you think
yeah,
that he would do something like that? That's
yeah.
crazy to me.
Yeah, but it's also a part of that lifestyle.
This is
Like
true.
that life, like he's probably got friends that he knew for 20, 30 years that would try and do him in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's like, no one, like if you're gonna, like you said, there's no honor amongst thieves, right? You in that lifestyle, this is what comes with it.
Well, see that, and that's the dynamic that is at the heart of this movie, where they're literally talking about this bond that these gentlemen share. One is through blood, and one is through association. But that association is genuine on the part of Caligaro. Like he doesn't fear this dude because he's a criminal. He doesn't want to be around him because he thinks that he can take his spot and that he can, rise and become the Godfather. He does it because this guy had all the things that we associate with manhood. All the girls,
Yeah.
lady, and all the ladies loved him. He gets all the respect in the neighborhood. He has
Mm-hmm.
the dope suits, the fly
Mm-hmm.
whip, the house, money in his pocket. He gets all the favors and the attention. Can't even call it respect. The attention that every man
Mm-hmm.
desires.
Yeah. And there's also, I think that like as boys, we growing into manhood, our first model is going to be our father if he's present.
Yes.
If he's not present, it'll be someone else. Maybe it's the principal at your
Mhm.
school. Maybe it's the teacher. Maybe it's your football coach. Maybe it's your baseball coach. Maybe it's the local hustler in your neighborhood. You're going to put these different models. These different men are going to become models for you.
Mhm.
A lot of people grew up where their models, their manhood models, were their uncles.
Mm.
So like if you had like if your dad had a lot of uncles, one of your uncles was like could really fight.
Yeah.
Like one of your uncles was like he would curse all the time and drink. One of your uncles was real smooth and always had a bunch of ladies. Like you'll see these different versions of manhood, and I think Kalogeno's like connection to Sonny and using that as a model, and even all the boys kind of pretending like they're different of those different versions of those guys they see. That's completely normal.
Mhm.
That's completely natural, right? It's our job, I think, as adults and as parents to figure out how to make sure that those mental models are good models because you're going to get those lessons regardless. And C ends up being a better, ironically, like a better person at the end because he learns from both Sonny and Lorenzo.
Yeah, and that's a key point that we may belabor to the point where this boy becomes a better person, a better version of not only those two, but of what
Mm,
that society should in value in and help these gentlemen become. Literally, you
yeah,
want someone who has street knowledge and common sense, but yet at the same token, they have book smarts. They're able to function in the real world, count money, open doors, yet understand why it's sunny outside versus why it's raining this day, and be able to be a pillar in their community. Help the little old
yeah,
lady across the street. Be a man of respect. And I think he ends up developing that as the movie continues further and further
yeah,
down the time span.
yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, yeah. So we're gonna. I know we're gonna touch on some of the stuff in the cake too,
Mhm.
man. So let's jump into it, man, because we got some more
Yeah.
good scenes to talk about here.
Well, my question to you, which is a segue for my like here, is why does Sonny say "let him be" when they have that scene where um, Callegro's pops Lorenzo rolls up to them and is like, "Yo,
Oh yeah,
why
yeah.
doesn't he go hard?"
Because I think he knows, like he knows that Lorenzo is right. He knows that
Mm,
Lorenzo's in here trying to defend his son. Like he's doing what he should do as a man, and he also knows Lorenzo is essentially a square dude.
mm,
He's not in the life. He's not a threat.
yeah,
He wasn't disrespectful, so he didn't break the code of ethics, if you will. You know what I mean? So like and I think he even says this to see later on, like something to the effect of every situation isn't solved by trying to hurt
yeah,
somebody.
yeah. He does.
You know what I mean? So he knows that. Like, there's no what good would it do him to
Mm,
do something to Lorenzo when Lorenzo is just trying to look out for his son? If he operated like that, that level of pettiness would actually reflect on him negatively amongst his men,
mm.
because then his men would be like, "Yo, you hurt that man because he was trying to look out for his son." Like
and
that's weak. Like that's weakness to do that.
And not only that, but then that would lead me to ask you this. If he did go that route, how do you think Callegero would look at him then?
Oh, he would turn his back on
You
him.
think so? You don't
Absolutely.
think he would be like, "Oh, that's par for the course. This is what these mafia guys are about." I mean, he literally saw him
Nah.
shoot somebody in the head.
Yeah, we talked. Yeah, we talked about this in a joint, man. I don't remember what movie it was, but all bets are off when you do something to people's parents, man. That's where
That's
that's
where
where
the
people
line is
draw the
crossed.
line.
Okay.
That's where they draw the line. You know, when you do that, then it's like, okay, no, you got to go. Oh, it was when we were talking about Monkey Man.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, nah, you did that to my mom, you got to
Yeah, you
go.
guys.
Like, you're
Yeah,
not,
there's
nah,
no turning.
there's no par for the course then. And it's evidenced by the fact that the person that killed Sonny is the son of the guy that he killed.
Yeah, but see, what they don't comment on is the fact that even though that was a revenge killing, his father, the boy's father, was completely wrong. He took a bat to Joe
Yeah,
Pesci, to
absolutely,
Carmine's head.
absolutely,
So he did
absolutely.
it off of emotion. If he would have
Yep,
seen this, how it played out, he would have been
yep.
terrorized. The father probably wouldn't have done it. He probably wouldn't have hopped out the whip with the bat. And it wasn't over a parking space. So that goes to show
Yeah,
that it was probably
yeah.
something
It wasn't
far
over.
more sinister. So the
Absolutely,
fact
yeah.
that this boy's like, hey, I gotta get revenge because you killed my dad.
Hmm.
He probably didn't even know the whole story because I don't recall seeing a young boy out there and being like, "Oh, my
No,
dad," whatever, whatever. So he's getting it
right.
from secondhand. It's hearsay at that
Yeah.
point. Which
Yep. All he knew was you killed my
yeah,
dad. You killed my father. You
you
got to
gotta
go.
go. Which leads to my point then about one of the favorite things that I like is Sonny and Callegro. They're walking after Callegro's father, drops him off on the bus and he gives him some game. when they're in the hallway joint where they're talking about excuse me, when he goes to the bar and he gives them the whole bunch of speeches, a lot of quotables here. So I'm gonna briefly try and go through it real quick. He says to him, sometimes hurting people ain't the answer. And he says,
That's
and he
it.
further
Yeah.
continues to say, he tells him about the troubles he's having, right? He says to him, hey, come here for a second, because the guy's ducking him over $20. And he says,
Yep.
is he a good friend of yours? And Caligro goes, no, I don't even like him. And he says, there's your answer right there. We get it this way. It costs you $20 to get rid of him, right? He's never going to bother you again. He's never going to ask you for money again. He's out of your life for $20. You got off cheap. Forget it. Caligro says, you're always right. You're always right. And Sonny responds, always right, eh? If I was always right, I wouldn't have done 10 years in the joint. Caligro says, what did you do every day? Sonny says, there's only 3 things you can do in the joint, kid. Play cards, lift weights, and get in trouble. So what did you do? Me? I read.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
says to
That's
him,
funny.
I could go
That's funny.
anywhere I want to. You know why I live in the neighborhood. Availability. I want to stay close to everything because being on the spot, I can see trouble immediately. Trouble's like a cancer. You got to get it early. You don't get it early, it gets too big, it kills you. That's why you got to cut it out. Capiche? Now, those 2 scenes are my favorite scenes. Why? Because they're microcosms of the of what we're dealing with, not only in the real world, but in that movie. So we'll work backwards. It's the kid who comes back, like we just commented on, that kills Sonny. So you have this little boy, the proverbial, minuscule mutation that you could have cut out and it would have been benign or whatever have you. You would have got it before it spread. But because he got too big, he was able to kill Sonny and go unnoticed. Only person that
Hmm.
saw him was Caligaro, and he knew that something was off. And this is during a very pivotal scene in which he wants to commend Sonny for taking him out of the car, saving his life, warning
Saving his
him
life. Yep.
repeatedly and ad nauseum about these guys were no good for him. And then he tells him, like, yo, look, when you're in jail, when you're confined, when you're in the box, when you're in the hole, there's only 3 options available to you. However, he chose a 4th option, which was to read and to study Machiavelli of all people and to get
Hmm.
a better perspective, another tool in his toolbox in order, and however he can incorporate that. So you're dealing with a guy who's a learned man, who's willing to
Hmm.
expose himself to different philosophies and ideas that he may not, say are common nature. There is the tie that, Machiavelli was Italian, et cetera, et cetera. So there's the brotherhood, ancestral bonds there. But nonetheless, that's not something that you would think a mafia boss would read, or at least I wouldn't. Um,
Yeah. He also is telling C and the audience that even where the rules exist, he's going to break
yeah.
them because he tells you that there's 3 things that you can
Hmm.
do, and then he tells him that he did a fourth one that he didn't say was an
Right.
option.
But that's also
So
free
he's also
thinking, though,
telling,
too. You know what I mean? He's able to
yeah,
think
but
outside the box.
he's also telling you I'm a
Yeah.
criminal.
Oh, of course. No question.
That's my point. Like I'm going to always figure out how to do
Yeah. I always
something
got an
that's
angle. Yeah.
not a part of the system. Yeah.
And I think last but not least, one of my favorite things about this movie is aside from the stories and such, the life lessons that they allow you to have. I mean, like you're dealing with somebody where um, he drives in reverse, like I mentioned before. Like that, when I saw that the first time on the screen, I was like, yo, I've never seen anybody drive in reverse, people getting out of the way, no car accidents, whatever, whatever. Uh, yo,
Oh
this
yeah,
dude
yeah,
is
yep.
talking about being loved versus being feared. And he's telling you, like, look, of course, obviously everybody wants both. There's that balance. But yet you can't have it because it's difficult. So I would have to pick in my profession being feared. And he gives you a breakdown as to why that is. And you can
Yeah. Hmm.
understand, like, yeah, as a mafia boss, yeah, you do want to be feared because
Yeah.
if you're a love, these dudes will think you're a pushover and they'll take advantage of you. And they'll see kindness as weakness and they'll always be coming for
Hmm.
your neck. The biker scene is also something that develops from this movie
That's a great one.
because he
Hmm.
says, he says to him, you know what? Now you're being disrespectful. Now you got to go. And they're like, yeah, yeah, whatever, whatever. And he's like, now you can't leave. And
Yeah,
like
they locked
the
him in.
way
That's a great
the
part.
tone, like everything that leads up to it. And then
Yeah.
of course, obviously the famous part about the doctor test. I mean, excuse me, the door test versus his man Mario's test, where even as crude as Mario is talking about, a woman performing
Hmm.
a certain act, in front of strangers, you get the idea like, oh, if she reveals her cards this way, then she
Mm-hmm.
is a floozy, and that's not obviously not.
Instead of floozy.
I'm trying to be diplomatic here, fam. And that's not a person you want because of her unscrupulous nature. Whereas
Yeah.
Sonny is a more diplomatic, and he says, "Look, man,
Yeah.
it's the door test. If she doesn't lean over, drop her." He
Mm-hmm.
calls her a broad,
Yeah.
but you can tell how dated the slang is. And he says, "You got to drop her immediately because that's just the tip of the iceberg of her selfishness, and you got to get
Yeah.
out before it gets even worse."
Yeah, and we did the door. Like I did the
Oh,
door
so have
test
I.
when I
All
was
of us
young.
have,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like, there's stuff from this movie that you learned from the movie that you remember, like the $20 part. Like you think about that now, like, yeah, okay, for $20, this person's gonna stay out of my life.
Mhm.
That's not
I got
bad,
off
right?
easy.
And the door test, I definitely did that growing up, and there were definitely people that did pass, and there were definitely people that didn't. That's before you had all the power locks and
Yeah.
everything
I think
and all that
I
stuff that we
I
have
I was gonna
now.
say I think everybody has tried something from this. The fact that he says, "Look at me. I did this to you. Remember," like,
Oh
come on,
man,
who hasn't used that
yeah,
line or some variation of
yo.
it? Like this movie
So I was reminded that that's
from
the scene from remember when R. Kelly and
Mr.
Ron
Big.
Isley did the down
Mhm.
low joint? Yeah, that's a scene from that. Like he beats him up and he looks at he's like, look at me, I did
I
this to you.
did this
That
to you. Like
they took that from the Bronx Tale. Yep.
when I saw Sonny lift that biker's head up, and I was like, "Oh, he's cold with it, man." Like, and it wasn't like he's the mafia boss. I don't get my hands dirty. No, he
Yeah.
showed you, like, yo, I'm with it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
Yeah.
one to trifle with.
Yeah. And I know you brought it up before, but it's like I like how the idea of Sonny and the mafia is a real thing,
Mhm.
and yet it never becomes a main thing in
No.
the movie. Like it's not like we got to see a scene with Sonny with all the other capos and he's
Mhm.
got to do that. Like
Yeah.
you don't really see that,
No.
and that's good because it doesn't make it about that. It really makes it about just the interrelationships
Mhm.
between him and the other folks. So yeah, man. So I got a couple things here too. I think I touched on before. I really just like the way Lorenzo holds down his
Mhm.
family in the movie. Like just like I said, always just kind of seeing the big picture, not taking the money, and then not letting C keep the money,
Mm.
like taking the money back. I just love that scene because he knows like I'm going to do something that Sonny doesn't like,
Yeah.
but it's more important to me that I do what's right in this situation. So I like that. We talked about Terrell Hicks in the movie. She's just great. Like I love the scene where she brings her brother to
Mm.
confront Cologino
Mm.
and figure out like, were you a part of assaulting him? And it's like the idea of like she didn't just go off his word because remember first she shows up
Yeah.
and she talks to him and then she's like, we're gonna get to the bottom of this, Willie. And she's like, Willie, get out the car. I mean, like this is a great scene. I love the
Nah, she
agency
keeps
and the
receipts.
strength that the movie gives her character throughout it. And then the last thing, and I think this is where like, and this is a big thing for me, like movies ending well.
I knew it.
The funeral scene shows shows Cologino that Sonny and Lorenzo are both right,
Mhm.
but they're right on different paths because he's at Sonny's funeral and he sees everybody laughing, joking, nobody's crying. There's nothing. He's the saddest person there, right? After everybody goes, he's the only one that's still there.
Mhm.
But then when he sees Lorenzo come, Lorenzo is there because of how he cares about him. So he cares about him and he realizes that Sonny has wasted his
Yeah.
potential because Sonny could have had a life where he was loved and where he was appreciated and respected, but he chose this life where nobody cares. And in that reality, he's right. Nobody did care,
Mhm.
but he didn't. But Lorenzo's path was the one that he ultimately wants to be on.
I'm glad
So I
I'm
love that.
glad you brought that
Yeah,
up, the wasted joint, man. We definitely got to touch upon that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it is. Like that's. But you see that throughout the movie. Like all it sees, psychopathic friends are wasted. They're wasted talent. They're waste. Like they fucking got blown up in their car trying to blow up a store. Like what are they doing? Like
I
that's one of those. That's one of those movie deaths that you watch it and you're like, good for y'all.
I was sitting there and I'm like, are they really
You
driving away with Molotov cocktails still in the car? Like you got to get
right,
rid of
right,
those. Like
right,
if
right.
you on that terrorism type stuff, you don't keep a grenade. You don't go home with the
Right.
bombs. Like, you're supposed
Right,
to
right,
deploy all that stuff.
right. It was great, man. But I like, but yeah, like you said, a lot of cake for this movie, man. I know there's a little hate. You got some, which I don't actually have anything, but I know you got
And
some.
that's
So,
the part
man,
we flip
the
in here.
floor is
Yeah, we
yours.
flipping spots. You're the one who usually has the hate. I was
I know. I'm an
baffled.
all time.
Yo,
I know. I'm an all star hater, man. All pro,
yo,
man.
the
I know. I'm first team.
player
I'm
hater
first team
of the
hater.
year.
I do it. I know, man.
Hate, hate, hate,
I know.
hate, 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 hate.
I know. I love it, man. I love to do it, man. I just did. I didn't have anything for this, man. I know it's gonna hurt my reputation in the streets, man. But it's how it's where it is.
Well, I'll carry on the tradition. This is a
Thank you.
little bit out of my character, but I am going to say the fact that Caligaro he calls Willie the N word. Jane
Yeah.
then comes back and tells Willie, like, you know what? I still want to be with you. My brother told me the whole truth. Like, after he said that, all bets would have been off for me. I'd have been like, I can't be with you. You don't like
Yeah.
me or my people. Like, you still have that in you. You just able to
Yeah.
like hide it very well. But
Yep.
this is how you feel. A part of you feels that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So I don't
Great. That's a great point. I like that one. I knew you were going to talk about that. If I was going to hate something, it would have been that one. But good, you got it. That's a good point.
But and
Great
then
point.
I think that transitions from not only like your innermost things that you may be repressing or you're trying to be a repentant racist, but the fact that Caligaro continues to associate with the kids that are known racist. It's like he's doubling
Yeah.
down. I can't understand, like, these are my friends, and even Sonny tells him like, no, these kids are going to get you in trouble. They're
Yeah.
going to not be on this planet very long. He didn't know how, he didn't know exactly when, but he
Yeah.
knew because he tells him, like, no, they're jerks. And that's not the exact word he says. And he says, no, look at me for a point of emphasis. He stresses it. No, they are jerks. And then he says,
Yeah.
and you know what? Slick is the biggest one of them all. He makes it a point
Hmm.
to actually say, like, yo, no, this boy who actually assaulted and accosted another kid for riding his bike in a public street, all because
Yep.
of the melanin in his body. And then I also have to say, like, segueing from those three racist, horrible acts is the fact that Sonny doesn't trust Caligaro. Now I get it. We discussed this. It's part of
Hmm.
it's part of his business model where that trust will get you killed.
Yeah. Business
You know what I
model.
mean? So you can't trust anybody. I get it. But at the same token, if he could trust anyone, you mean the kid that could have ratted on you, that could have told that he's a civilian and he's a minor.
Hmm.
And they tell
Yeah.
kids to always tell the truth. So this is a kid who had the wherewithal to be like, you know what? It's not worth it for whatever was going through his tiny little brain. His father even doubles
Hmm.
down and says, you know what? You did a good thing for a bad man. And even that confused that little boy. He just knew that he had to live there and he didn't want to bring any trouble to his family or trouble to himself. And then in turn, that led to the movie to develop as it has.
Wait. So I do just want to say something about
Mhm.
that. I do think that in that scene where C has a chance to rat out Sonny, I think he doesn't rat him out because he likes him.
Oh, so you think
I
it's
don't think he.
admiration?
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah, I mean it's his hero. I think he doesn't. That's his hero, and he doesn't want to do something to his hero. I don't think. I think Lorenzo is probably thinking, yeah, that's probably good that you did say that because we can't move out of here fast enough to get out of here, and these cops are not going to protect us. we definitely won't make it through till tomorrow. But I thought C always did that because he just just a sense of admiration, like you said, that he had for Sonny.
See, well, that's where I'm conflicted because the scene where he goes for confession and he tells the father, like, "Hey, your guy may be powerful up there, but my guy, he's a dangerous dude down here, and I'm not with
Yep.
that lifestyle." In fact, I think it's one of the joints where I will get into a little bit later.
Yeah, it's one of the
Yeah,
questions you got.
we'll get
Yep.
into a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
know.
later, but the fact that this boy has the wisdom beyond his own years to know, like, no, this is where I live at. These are the code
Yeah.
of ethics. These are the mores and the norms that we adhere to. And these things we just don't do. We don't rat. Even though he's a civilian, even though he's a minor, even
Yeah.
even though he is far removed from this, he says, like, no, I have to live here and I don't want to be known as the rat that fingered Sonny.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good
and I
point.
think the other
Yes.
thing that doubles down on it is, look, not only do I idolize this man, et cetera, but at the same token, I love my dad enough to not want to bring harm his way. I think he recognizes like, yo, my dad is the one who protects us. My dad is the one that I go to for help. If something were to happen, the first target is my dad. He's not thinking that these dudes are going to do anything to him. He's a kid. But he saw like
Yeah.
grown men handle business in a fashion that little boys don't handle.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about children being in like adult
Mm,
situations. Like children can't know all the ways that it's gonna
yeah.
go. Like he might like if he thinks that something's gonna happen to the father, he's wrong. It's gonna be all three of them are gonna be gone. Like him, his
Yeah.
mom, and his dad's all gonna be gone if he would have fingered Sonny in that situation. But anyway, though, let's move on.
We're going to transition now into, the popcorn. So what you got, CJ?
I'm going 4.5 on this one, man.
Mm,
4.5 on it. It's a good. It's like I said in the beginning. It's one of my. I love Robert De Niro. This is one of my favorite Robert De Niro movies, and I like this joint. So it's 4.5. Not quite 5. I could like kind of go into my whole thing about that, but 4.5 is good.
yeah. Yeah.
Like 4.5 is exceeds expectations
Especially with your
for a
rating, man.
movie.
So I definitely
Right.
appreciate that.
Right.
And we're in sync, man. I'm going 4.5 too. For obviously everything I've stated, as well as the dislikes. That's why it's not a complete 5. So,
There it
so
is.
we're going into the questions, and I got a load of questions for you, fam.
Okay. All right.
Loyalty or respect. I know I'm borrowing from Drink Champs, but hey,
Mhm.
flattery and all that good
I
stuff.
don't know. So I thought about this one. I don't know that you can separate those two from each other.
Mm,
Like if for me, if I respect you, I'm gonna have a sense of loyalty to you. And if I have a low sense of loyalty to you, then I have respect for you. So I don't think you can. Those are not to me. Those are not dichotomous,
okay.
or can be made dichotomous.
All right. So what about love or fear then? To quote Sonny.
Yeah, I know. I'll take love, man.
Mm,
Fear. The thing is like Sonny's rationale is that love is an emotion and like emotions are temporary, but fear is also temporary.
mm,
No one stays afraid forever
ah,
of the same thing. Anything about all the
touche.
stuff that what you were afraid of in life, what you were afraid of at 10, you're not afraid of
Mm,
anymore. And there's stuff that you were afraid of 5 years ago that you're not afraid of now. Like you can't the human spirit won't allow you to maintain the same amount of fear forever.
mm,
Like, think about we talk about like stuff like slavery all the time. People were on plantations threatened with being killed and hung and destroyed and everything, and they still ran
mm,
because you can't maintain that
right.
fear. People cannot stay afraid forever. So, love will make people do things that they never thought was possible. And I would rather have that than fear, because the other thing about fear is when people fear you, eventually they're going to try to figure out how to get rid
Oh,
of
no
you.
question. No question.
So
Uh, what does Calogero's interest in Sonny suggest about him? Are they his friends? Is he fascinated by Sonny? What's the role in the neighborhood that he has?
yeah, I mean, I think he just sees, like, I think we talked about this when we were talking about 99 homes. Like, boys are going to be attracted to the most compelling and consistent images of manhood that are around them. And Sonny is compelling because he's in charge. He's a person of authority. Like you said, he got the nice car, he got the nice clothes. People respect him. Those are the compelling parts. He's also consistent because he's right there. He's at the bar all the time. He's on the corner. He's present.
Mm,
So if you're compelling and you're consistent, that's what's going to attract a young person to use you as an example. If you've ever like been a part of like a mentoring program, you showing up all the time, the boys are going in that program are going to see you and take things from you. Like I've done that, so I've
yeah.
seen like that is something that happens. Whether you're a good or bad model, if you're compelling and consistent, you're going to become somebody's model. So I think that's what that is, and I think the neighborhood sort of looks at Sonny as a necessary evil in some ways
Mm,
because he is also protective of the community. Like he's not all bad. Like he stops like the bikers from
mm.
tearing stuff up. He maintains a certain social order that people have found a way to operate in within, and I think that also makes the community treat him in a certain way.
I can appreciate that. Um, is Lorenzo a hypocrite when he tells Caligaro that he did a good thing for a bad man, yet he explains to him that sometimes you got to do certain things you got to do even though you're not right and you did the right
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. This is the difficulty, I think, of being, um, like, as adults with our children, we try to figure out how to give adult lessons to
Hmm.
them in a language and rationale children can understand. Some things just don't translate into
Mm,
that. I think what Lorenzo's trying to tell Cologino in that scene is like, yeah, there's doing the right, what the right thing is never disconnected from the situation at hand, and you have to weigh those two things together to figure out, like, when should I do this, when shouldn't I do this, when shouldn't I say this, when shouldn't I say that. And that's not something that you can just teach a child like that. Like, you can talk about it, but that's also lived experience
mm,
to know how to do that. So I don't see it as hypocritical, because it would be hypocritical, I think, if he told C to do something that he wasn't going to do himself.
mm.
So if he told C, like, no, you can't mess with Sonny, but then he messes with Sonny,
Yeah.
that would be hypocritical.
Okay.
But he's also trying to keep both of them separate from the local
No,
mobster.
that's tough, right there. I could appreciate that. My last question is, why does the priest accept Caligula's statement that my guy is bigger down here? What is the view of religion that emerges from that scene? Does the priest uh, tolerance of that suggest that religion is powerless to combat evil in this world, in the real world, in that movie world, or that God leaves room for human beings to exercise responsibility, free will, choice? Um, I know this is a lot of questions in one, but to kind of get to what I'm getting at is, how does this overlap with the different meanings of the fifth, meaning like the fifth as far as
Yeah.
like, Ten Commandments, or as well as pleading the fifth as far as
Yeah.
Constitution.
Yeah, I think part of it, I think, like, probably the original intention of the scene was to be funny
Mm,
and to also, like, show the reach of Sonny. But I think the question that you're asking is like a deeper question, because what it reveals is a lack of faith on the part of the priest,
mm,
because he really shouldn't have said that
right,
to
right,
him, right? It doesn't, there can be no, like, depending on your spiritual orientation, there's like an idea of, like, as above so
right,
below.
right,
So if this thing is stronger down here, then that would mean that the other thing, it have to be stronger up there as
right.
well, and that's not how it works, right? So the question that you're saying, it really reveals a crisis of conscience for the priest, and it also kind of shows how there's so many people in the neighborhood that are not really operating above board, regardless of the position that they're in.
Gotcha.
So that's what you got there. All right. So I got mine. All right. So I got a couple for you. My first one is kind of funny, and it's kind of like, well, I don't know if it's funny, but it's within the movie. Yo, what happened to C's mom in the second half of the film, man?
Yo, I'm thinking like, yo, she's just on some housewife bonbons, watching TV type joint, and they were like, yo, this is not interesting. We don't need her. She's just filler for, whatever have you.
They just, they just, I mean, like, from the last time you see her
Mhm.
is like, I think when he's like, when Lorenzo's on the balcony thing with her, and then that's it. Like, you don't see her in the rest of the whole movie. Like, I was like, what
I
happened?
mean, no,
What happened to
shout
C's
out to
mom?
Catherine Narducci. She was awesome in what's the joint with Bumpy Johnson that just came out with the
Hoodlum.
no, 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 no. That Hoodlum is the movie with um Lawrence Fishburne, but the
Yeah, but it's with these
Forrest
Bumpy Johnson in
Whitaker,
the
yeah,
movie.
no, with Forrest Whitaker that came out, and Swiss Beat,
Oh, Godfather of
yeah,
Harlem.
she was dope in that.
Yeah.
She's and her resume is impeccable, but in this particular movie, they were just like, "Yo, you've said all you need to say. We're good."
So she's it. All right. I wonder if she left Lorenzo because she was tired of him
Well, he
being
asked her
driving the
like, "Yo,
bus.
are you tired of being with a bus driver?" And she was not.
Yeah.
She was like, "Nah." But again,
I think she dipped
nah,
on him.
she's
That's what
loyal,
I think.
man. She's loyal.
No, she did. She did. She didn't even show up to the funeral.
Well, not everybody went to the funeral, and you got to remember too, he came to say, "Hey, I can understand that you did love my son. I didn't hate you. There was a
Yeah.
form of respect there, but I just didn't get down with the lifestyle you led, and I couldn't allow my son, my only son, to travel down that path."
Got it. I'm gonna still say she dipped on Lorenzo,
It's
but
cold
that's gonna
blooded.
that's gonna be that. All right. Next question. So where is C 10 years later?
Um,
Did-
I think that he has an affinity for black women, and he went down south. He's in Atlanta. He's doing his thing. You know, he's with the Ice Spices, even though she's from New York. But he's with, you know, that type of gal. He's doing his thing as a dirty old man because he loves chocolate.
And that's what. All right, that was good. That went a surprisingly different way than I thought it was going to. All right, next question. Is it odd? Just okay. Now, my backstory on this one is just kind of knowing how the Italian culture works around family.
Mhm.
Is it odd that Sonny wasn't married and didn't have kids of his own?
No, not at all. Because he understands in that lifestyle, in that profession, if you will, you can't have no attachments. You got to be able to be like, yo, I'm out. And I think that because he does have a heart, I mean, this guy is not heartless. I think he didn't want to have to bring his children in a world in which he knows that has a short lifespan, that they would be a means to get at him. I don't think he's like, nah, I don't need anybody to apply pressure to me through my kids and through my wife.
Hmm. Okay, so it's a decision of convenience, or as you would say, part of his business
Yeah, no
model.
question. And you got to remember,
Part of
he
his
tells
model.
him, I had three loves in my life all at once at 16. He got it out of his system
That's right.
and he's
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
to go.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, cool. All right, here's my last one. This kind of brings us back to where we started. Talking about Robert De
Yes.
Niro and his roles.
Full circle.
What are your top 5 Robert De Niro roles?
Well, I want you to go first, man. Let me hear what you got.
No, no, no. I'm asking the questions, man. No, I'm asking I'm asking the questions. What you got?
You beat
Nah.
you beat me to the punch. I'm rocking with, in no particular order. I'm going with James Jimmy Conway. I'm rocking with Vito Corleone, Neil
Mm-hmm,
McCauley, Sam Ace
mm-hmm.
Rothstein, and Frank Sheeran. So in order,
Frank Sheeran.
Sheeran is from The Irishman, uh,
Okay. Of
Ace, Casino, Neil is
course.
Heat,
Heat. Yep.
Vito is Godfather 2, and last but not least, James Jimmy McCauley. Come on, man. Rest in power. Ray Liotta. Of course, got
Mm-hmm.
Joe Pesci. Come on, man. You know what time it is. Yeah,
Goodfellas.
no question. Come on.
Yeah, Goodfellas. Yeah, that's a good list.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good list. I would the only one that I would add is Max Cady, Cape Fear. I talked about it at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. Like he's great in that joint,
So what
man.
you
He's
taking off then? Because you can only have five.
so this is the thing. So ironically, I would have to. Well, this is gonna start a firestorm of things, but I actually didn't like Goodfellas that much, man.
What?
I actually did. I know, man. I know. My gangster
Wow.
movie card is gonna. I know.
Woo.
I did not like Goodfellas that much, man.
Wow. That.
I did not. I know. I know, man. I know. I know it's burying the lead to say it, man. But it's one of those. It's one of those movies. I really want to like it.
Yeah.
I just don't. I've watched it. I really don't like it, and so it doesn't register to me as like a really good movie. And I don't really. I actually I like a Bronx. Ironic, it's funny. I actually the beginning of A Bronx Tale is very similar to the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
Goodfellas, like telling the
Yeah.
story about
Mm-hmm.
how he's like working with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
in the little club thing and everything. I actually like Bronx Tale more. I think A Bronx Tale is actually a better movie than Goodfellas, and I know, like that's like I know it's like yeah, it's out there. I know I'm gonna get threatening emails and messages for that one, but
Wow.
that's where it
I
is,
don't know.
man.
I don't know.
There it is.
I don't know what to
I
say.
know, I know, I know. It's nothing to say, man. But you forced it out of me by saying that. So on to the themes and closing.
And on that note,
On to the closing.
wow. Let me. A Bronx Tale compellingly explores the complexities of trust, respect, love, devotion, as seen through the eyes of a young man torn between two vastly different worlds. Caligaro idolizes Sonny, a local mobster drawn to the allure of quick rewards and the street wisdom imparted by his mentor. Despite Sonny's captivating influence, Caligaro's father, Lorenzo, strives to instill values of hard work and integrity, highlighting the blurred line between right and wrong. The film does not romanticize the American dream. Instead, it offers a sobering explanation of the ethical compromises it often demands. Caligaro learns that the ideals he once had he can easily be twisted, leaving him blinded by the seduction of power and instant gratification. Trust becomes a fragile commodity as the conflicting worlds of fatherly devotion and street loyalty clash. The struggle for respect and the right path is an ongoing battle complicated by Sonny's shrewd code of honor and justice. This narrative invites viewers to reflect on the true price of success and the sacrifices made in its pursuit. Ultimately, A Bronx Tale compellingly showcases the enduring power of paternal guidance amid corrosive external influences, urging a deeper contemplation of life's moral ambiguities.
There it is. There it is, man. You're at an advantage if you have a father that loves
Mm,
you and is trying to advise you and guide you. And this story definitely gets to the heart of that. And it's actually a good segue into our last movie
yes.
that we're going to be covering this month, which is going to be Boys in the Hood, and gives us a chance to talk about one of our favorite fatherly characters, Furious Styles.
Who's
So
messing with
that'll
that
be
name? Fury
that's a
Styles.
great movie name, right? So yeah, so we're gonna get into that. So once again, the Sticky Floors podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, we are on Spotify, we are on YouTube. We're asking you to like and subscribe and comment and share because all that stuff it helps us to do the show better. It helps us to expand the reach of the show, and that's really what we're trying to do here. So take care. Have a good rest of your evenings. Peace.